Hello, everyone. This is me rehearsing a presentation about marketing. I will have the chance to talk about marketing on the stage of Fantoche Animation Festival 2024 in the Industry Day event. And I decided to take this opportunity of the rehearsal to also record a video and offer it to my YouTube subscribers or patrons later after the event. So, optimizing energies here as a one-man band freelancer and talking to you today about marketing. And in particular, the title that was assigned to me when I was asked by Industry Day to talk about marketing, it was Be Your Own Best Marketing Agent. I realized that marketing, it is a hot topic. Everyone seems to feel the urge to talk about it, not only in the creative industry, but this is the one where I work. So I noticed this is a topic that comes regularly. But at the same time, everyone seems to have a complicated relationship with this topic. And that's why I decided to change the title a little bit and call it Screaming to the Void, to focus on today's presentation about the frustration that people usually feel when they talk about marketing and the pressure, where this comes from. Why do we feel so powerless, or why do many people feel the imposter syndrome when we talk about marketing our own work, our own creative work? And I do understand. I mean, I get it. It's hard enough to do creative work, and it is very common for creative people to feel detached from their craft when they have to jump into marketing and talk about self-marketing, talk about their own work online, or also not online, but mainly online. But it is at the same time something we need to do, or we feel like we need to do at least, because we are freelancers, we are alone most of the time, and we feel the need to be noticed, to get engagement, to let the world know who we are, what we're doing. And at the end of the day, to get to have an audience and to get some engagement from our public. And the truth is that nowadays, more and more, we live in a very noisy and crowded environment, both online and offline. And it can be very challenging to do that on top of the creative work. So this is the topic that I would like to address today. This is the issue that I would like to tackle. And first of all, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself so that you know where this information comes from, who I am, and what's the background of this person speaking to you. So my name is Giulia Martinelli, and in short, I'm an animation director. You will see also later in the presentation, it's not so easy to simplify our presentation in one line when you are a full-time freelancer, because we juggle so many different things that it's hard to just define ourselves with one word. But animation direction is what I knew I wanted to do since I graduated in Italy, in Turin in 2015. After my graduation film Merlot, I decided it was a choice to be 100% freelance. And I also knew I wanted to leave Italy and start traveling the world. And this was my idea as a postgraduate student, to be a freelancer, to be free and flexible and make more films and make more creative work. That was my dream. I was aware of the fact that would have meant wearing many hats. But I had to learn in my process, in my path, how to make this work. And today I'm going to share my own experience, which is, of course, a personal point of view about self-marketing especially. But I hope this could also get some interesting insights for everybody. After graduation, as I said, with my graduation film Merlot, I had the chance to travel the world a little bit and to jump into this freelance career. I felt like I could work from anywhere remotely before it was cool, and to kind of join different creative projects. And I did enjoy that time. But of course, I was already aware of the fact that the path wouldn't have been just a simple line going up, but it would have been a sort of roller coaster with ups and downs. And the other day, I saw this post by Adult Swim that I think really simplifies very well what I'm talking about, which is something that all creative people can resonate with usually. So this kind of ups and downs and roller coaster of the creative practice. And I decided to use this graph for today's presentation, simplifying it with EI and existential crisis, and talk about all the ups and downs that I encountered in my experience. And first existential crisis happened short after graduation, when I realized that yes, I was done with studying, but now I needed to learn something else, which was also not necessarily my first passion or my first choice. I wanted to make, as I said, creative work and make films, but I realized I had to learn so much more than that, being a full-time freelancer. And I realize, as many creative people do, that creative work is only a portion of the time I actually spend working. And here's a great meme picturing this. And what I learned quickly, and everybody knows, is that as a full-time freelancer, you have to wear many, many hats and juggle all these roles. So I learned that not only I can do creative work, as I thought, but I have to do bookkeeping and tech support and problem solving and admin stuff, and also marketing, of course. This turned out to be a bigger job that, as a student or a freshly graduated student, I expected. And marketing, it is one of them, and it's an important one, as we said before, because we have to get noticed in this crowded and busy and noisy place. So I started to learn marketing very early as a freelancer, using some online tools, videos and articles and online classes. And on top of that, I consider myself to be a shy and introvert person. I was a shy kid, and you might not see it now, but I really had to learn in my process how to be able to show myself and present my work to the world. And to be fair, I didn't make it simple for me, because I decided to go full-time freelancer first, and then even more complicating my life and things by moving often from country to country and needing to starting over in different places many times. So this was definitely a thing that was definitely something that pushed me out of my comfort zone and created the condition and the necessity for me to find strategies and to learn strategies. And now I'm going to show you a couple of strategies. First things first is organization. I have to say I am quite of an organization freak. I love planning, I love lists, I love calendars. And this definitely helped me as a full-time freelancer, because you do need some kind of structure and self-control to go through all this stuff. And the second is practice. You've been hearing this thousands of times, but it is true that even the most shy person with practice can learn, for example, how to speak in front of an audience, and practice makes things better and easier. I want to tell you a couple of tips that I learned, that I apply, and I use on a regular basis in my practice. First thing is to be easy to find. And what I mean by that is that if someone Googles your name, needs to be able to find the information you want them to find. So maybe find your website, your portfolio, most likely your email and contact. And I'm saying this, which sounds very obvious, but it is really not, because very often I notice, not just with students or freshly graduated students, that there is not an easy path to find you and find your work. It's important that the name you use is consistent. If you choose an artistic name, it needs to be consistent and used everywhere, even though it's much more easy and recommended to use just simply name and surname. It's important that links are working, that your platforms are connected, so that if I find you on Instagram, I can easily find your website, and vice versa, or that the pages are updated, these kind of things. So long story short, don't make it hard for people to find you and connect with you. If they have to go through a treasure hunt just to find your email and contact you, this doesn't make it simple, doesn't make it efficient. And second is cold emails. And cold emails are something that usually scare people and creative people especially, because it means to knock on doors of strangers without being invited and without waiting for an open call or for a public request. But I do believe this is important to know and to be able to do, because it is part of the game as a freelancer, and you need to be able to reach out to clients or professionals you think you would like to work with and you think there is a good chance or a good fit. This means to reach out to studios or agencies or producers or potential collaborators and let them know who you are, what you're doing, and why you think it would be a great fit to work together. What we need to keep in mind when doing this is, first of all, there's nothing to lose, and it's a very common practice. And if this doesn't help you to overcome the fear of cold emails, you could ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario? And in fact, the worst case scenario and what usually people are afraid of is rejection. So the worst case scenario could be that they answer no thanks, or that they don't answer at all. And honestly, you realize very soon that that's not a big deal. First of all, if they say no thanks, that's fine. And usually it could be no thanks now, because maybe it's not the right timing. And in both cases, it is okay to follow up and update them like in some time in the future, in 6 months, 12 months. And this is, for example, what I do when I reach out to someone and I think it could be a very good fit, but maybe it's not the right timing. For some reason, it doesn't work out. This doesn't mean that, oh my God, now I'm ashamed forever, I'm never going to write a cold email again. But I would rather put on a notification or a note in my calendar 6 or 12 months from now, telling myself to reach out again to this person or studio or agency, probably with an updated reel or an updated proposal, and see how it goes. And it's good to keep in mind also that studios and agencies and producers, they are busy people. And if they don't answer your email, could be because they have too many, or it's not necessarily a bad thing. And also because they receive so many emails, they might also not remember when you write back again in 1 year or so. Connected to this, it's follow-up. Follow-up is another very important skill that a freelancer needs to master. And it means to reach out again and to remind people that you are there, that you're doing things. And follow-up can mean connecting to what I just said about cold emails, could also mean, as I said, to come back in 1 year and say, here I am again, this is my updated portfolio, maybe we can collaborate. But it could also mean, for example, after events, to reach out to the people you met. For example, now we are at a festival at Fantoche International Animation Festival, and this week it's been very socially engaging, and you probably met many people and talked a lot and exchanged ideas, and most likely your pockets and bags are full of contacts and business cards, and you're tempted when you go home to just relax because it's been a very intense week. But I learned very early as a student to keep a little bit of energy when I come home from a festival and sit at my desk and go through these contacts and business cards one by one and reach out to these people, writing to them and reminding them who I am, where we met, what we talked about, and create this connection. This follow-up part is quite essential, in my opinion, to build a network and to keep in touch with potential collaborators in the future. Following up could also mean after a successful collaboration with a client, instead of ending the email or the call saying it was very great to collaborate, was nice, let's hope we can collaborate again in the future, bye. What I do usually is to try to keep in touch with them, and I connect to the next point here, which is newsletter, because one way to end this kind of emails could be, let's keep in touch, and if you want to receive some updates from me, this is my newsletter, you can subscribe. And newsletters are in effect a good practice, and you probably heard a lot about it, like you should have a newsletter and it's good to have a newsletter. And the reason why is, first of all, it eludes the algorithm, and so you have a little more control of who's going to see and read your content. And second, if you are one of those people feeling the imposter syndrome when approaching marketing, this should make you feel a little better, because newsletter usually combine people, actually not usually, they do combine people who agreed in receiving your news. So you don't feel bad about it. You're not spamming or bothering them. Otherwise, they would leave the newsletter, and that's also fine. And this brings me, all these points bring me to the next point, which is, it's a lot. It is a lot to keep all these things in mind and to do all these things. And it is overwhelming as a freelancer to do all this stuff. And for this reason, my mantra has always been to optimize my energies and to automate as much as possible. And here, just a parenthesis for this video, optimizing means also using the rehearsal for a presentation to create a nice video, which is content for my channel and for my followers. So yeah, that's a very good example right in front of you. And talking about automation, I want to say, for example, one way I automate things is to have a list of template emails, because in the creative practice, many times, you have to write the same kind of email so many times, and they're usually emails at the very early stage of a collaboration where you're not even sure if this email is going to turn into a real client. And so those kind of emails that say, thank you for reaching out, I'm happy you like my work, it will be very great to collaborate, I think your project sounds interesting, I need to know more information about it. What is the time frame? What is the deadline? Do you have a budget? All these kind of things I have to type so many times. It became very useful for me to have a nicely written email, even in a couple of different languages, so that I don't waste time to type this over and over, and I have it ready and I make it simpler for me, because one-man band. And so to recap, of course, yes, it's a lot of attempts and a lot of tries, and but you should do it. It is part of the job to try and to jump into the unknown and to send cold emails. And you could ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen in order to feel a little more confident? And usually that's enough to realize that there's nothing to lose. And second, and that's important also to remind yourself, is that if you don't try, you cannot succeed. All of those are investments, and I like to call them blind investments or even gambling, because we don't know if all this energy and efforts are going to bring some result. I like to call those also seeds. That's a metaphor that I use when I think and talk about this, is that as a freelancer, I try different things. I try to spread different seeds in different places. And if you ever planted anything, you know that not every seed you plant is going to sprout. And also not every seed that sprouts is going to grow into a plant. But this helps, like this big number of seeds all around you will help, because at least a couple of them will sprout, and then you will know what is working and what doesn't work. So there is a lot of trial and error, and there is no universal recipe as well. It's a lot of really trying. And that's also why over the years, in these 8 years of freelancing, I started to diversify my income streams, and I went, for example, into teaching or image licensing as well. And hopefully, what you hope, of course, is that with time, you learn where the more fertile ground is, and so you will plant more seeds in that area. And then eventually the ups and downs curve goes slowly up. So in the beginning, I said that I'm a filmmaker, and what I want to do is to make films. But then what I end up doing is much more than that. And you can see how I end up juggling all these things and also connecting different areas as much as I can. So early in my freelance career, I was juggling my filmmaking with client commissions. And then from there, I started to add some image licensing or digital products. And then I started to incorporate some teaching and mentoring and so on. It is important to keep in mind, as I mentioned before, it is a lot of trial and error. And when things don't work, or for example, when we plant seeds and they don't sprout, we might spread them somewhere else. And when they do sprout, then we might plant more seeds on that ground. I mentioned success a couple of times now because we're trying to achieve these success results, etc. But I do think there is, it's important to take some time and discuss the word of success and to talk about the definition of this word, because it is definitely a personal definition. We sometimes forget, and maybe I might be saying something obvious here, but I do believe it is important to remind ourselves that success is such a personal concept and can mean so many different things for different people. So when we market something, we have a goal in mind, and that's our idea of success. But this personal meaning and requires personal balance and a personal recipe, really. So there is no universal rule to define what success is and how to achieve it. So each one of us should, at some point in its career or in its practice, sit down and ask herself, what are my priorities and what are my goals? What is success to me? What does it mean? And I'm going to give you here a couple of quick examples. For someone, success could mean to be able to work on fulfilling, meaningful projects. And here I'm talking from my perspective about creative field or animation even, or freelancer life, but it could be applied to really any other field and even about life in general. But for someone else, could be a financial success, could be to be able to pay the bills at the end of the month, and that's success as well. And financial success, now I mentioned, could also be so many different things. For someone, again, could be just to pay the bills. For someone else, could be to buy the third Tesla. So this is just to remind ourselves that to keep this in mind. What is success for me? What is success for the others? might be something completely different. And this brings me to the next slide, which is to keep in mind that success is often a sort of iceberg where we see, in inverted commas, a successful person, but we don't know what's behind that. We don't know the background. We don't know the struggles. We don't know the trial and error. We don't even know the priorities of that person. So it's very hard to compare, and it's good to keep in mind that we don't see the whole picture, and it's most likely a distorted reality what we see. Connected to this, there is an idea that we have to be on social media to do self-promotion, and this is such a common belief, and very often I get into conversation with creative people about this. And my answer is, do you really need to? Because maybe you don't. Maybe for your goals and your priorities, there is no need to market yourself. There's no need to be extremely active and post daily and to stress yourself to reach your goal. This brings me to another existential crisis of mine, which is after hopping around Europe and being this flexible freelancer I wanted to be, and building an European network, I then decided for one reason or the other to move to Switzerland. And I also realized that the network I built in Europe was not so useful anymore. In fact, Switzerland is quite a bubble, and very expensive bubble, and it was for me necessary to build a new network and to build a Swiss network in order to survive here. Of course, I didn't ditch my European or world connections, but I had to start over again and start think differently, more on a smaller scale and more locally. And this brings me to communication, which is something very much connected with marketing. Marketing is about communication, is about communicating in an effective way to your audience. And storytelling, which is communication, has been part of human history since the very beginning. And so we should be good at this. And even more, the people of my industry are telling stories for a living. They should theoretically be even great at this, right? And for some reasons, creative people, storytellers, filmmakers still feel obstacles and do struggle to approach marketing and to talk about their own work online, but also to strangers. And one thing about communication that I think it's important to keep in mind is that it has to be an ongoing conversation. I think what feels weird for us is to jump on the social media platform just to drop a link and say something and then disappear again. And this does feel unnatural. It's not part of a conversation. It's not like sitting around the fire and telling stories. It's weird. And second is consistency, which is something everybody heard about when talking about social media. You have to be consistent. But consistency could also mean once a month. It doesn't mean twice a day, necessarily. And about the consistency, I could also say one tip that helps, talking about optimizing and wearing many hats, is to be able to schedule the kind of communication you want to have online. Here is a little graph for communication online, but also offline, that could be useful. I found this kind of suggestions many times in my marketing studies and explorations and researches, and I thought of putting it together to simplify the process. First of all, we need to start a conversation or to join a conversation, bringing on the table a topic that we care about and we want to talk about. And by doing this, by talking about a topic, by doing this, by starting a conversation around the topic, we will give some value and share our point of view and our insight. So hopefully giving something interesting and useful for the people reading or listening. And third is engaging. So this so far has been a one-way conversation, but a conversation usually includes a second agent, and so someone answering and reacting. So one way to engage someone else in conversation is to ask questions, involve the audience in some way, using a poll or bring people in different ways. And here we're talking, it could be through a newsletter, it could be through Instagram stories, could be in in-person conversation. And lastly, only at this point, you could have your call to action, share your link, invite people in, and market yourself or market your product or service. And the most important thing is that that's not the end. The conversation goes on, and it's a cycle. As I said before, it's constant. It's not just dropping in and then disappearing for a couple of months, but it's about sharing the whole process, the whole journey constantly, an ongoing conversation. And this brings me to the next point, which is community, which is a little different from network. Network is what you build up. It's a professional connections for work. But community, I think it's even more than that, because it includes support. And the title of today's event at the Industry Day at Fantoche is Route to Rise. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Route to Rise means to support each other in order to improve, to grow. And I do believe, even more as a freelancer, we think freelancer work is solo work, and it is very lonely most of the time. But we are part of a community. And even more as a freelancer, we rely on collaboration, and we rely on community and communication with the other members of the community. On a very practical level, to give you an example, I really appreciated over the years in different communities the conversation that was going on through freelancers sharing, for example, rates, daily rates, hourly rates, or feedback about clients, red flags clients or good clients. Community is also attending events, local events, and being active. So active participation, so that you don't just take, but you also give. And it's also about being a nice human. So I'm getting towards the end of my talk, and I want to end with another existential crisis of mine, which is I've been now working 8 years as a freelancer. As you saw, jumping here and there, hopping around Europe, a lot of ups and downs and struggles and trial and error and attempts. And even though I've been spending now 6 years in Switzerland, I still struggle and still find it hard to find a good balance and find enough Swiss clients and be able to plan ahead more than 1 month. And the existential crisis comes when the very cool local animation festival, Fantoche, reaches out to me to talk about my success and about my amazing strategies. So here kicks the imposter syndrome again. And the reason why I'm saying this more like with some humor, really, but also talking about something real, is that there's really no perfect recipe. There's really no perfect path. And we're all trying, we're all struggling, we're all finding our own balance. And in a way, I'm happy I didn't find it yet, because this keeps me going, keeps me learning and wanting to improve. And I'm grateful to be here today and to talk to you about all this. And I hope you learned something useful and something interesting today. And last but not least, I want to have a recap to sum up the most important takeaways from this presentation, which is, first of all, define what is your goal, what are your priorities and your why. And this will also bring you to defining your meaning for success. and finding your own balance and your own recipe, which, by the way, can also change over time, because in this chapter of life, this could be your priority and your goal, but it could change. And second is to get organized, which is quite crucial, especially as a solo one-man band freelancer. And lastly is to be an active and kind member of the community. So thank you for sticking with me, and I hope it was an interesting talk. I hope you took something interesting with you, and I'm open for Q&As. And since this is a video, let's do this in the comments, I would say. I hope it was useful. Thank you. Bye. And here are more memes.